What would you do if every single person around you, every beggar, every refugee, every dying slave was worth exactly 1 silver coin a day just for breathing? And what if the only thing standing between you and a fortune was keeping them alive? That is the question Lurian Wisteria never planned to ask himself. He was not supposed to be here. 3 weeks ago, he was the third son of a powerful duke in the capital, living the comfortable, forgettable life of minor nobility. Then palace politics happened, the kind that leaves no survivors and no explanations. His father's name was destroyed overnight. The title, the estate, the connections, all of it stripped away like skin off a wound. And Lurian, the youngest, the least important, the easiest to throw away, got what was left. A title so small it barely counted as one, and a territory so forgotten that even the maps got it wrong. Baron of Greywood town, the lowest rank of nobility in the empire, ruling over a patch of mud that even stray dogs had enough sense to avoid. His first step into his new kingdom landed squarely in a puddle of donkey waste, mixed with rotten vegetable juice. Welcome home. Greywood was not a town so much as a collection of bad decisions held together by old straw and desperation. 24 shacks that looked one strong breeze away from collapse, roofs blackened with age, streets made entirely of mud, and the smell. The kind of smell that happens when an entire population has decided that bathing is optional, and toilets are a myth. His subjects stood in the street wearing clothes made from old potato sacks, staring at him like he was death itself arriving in fancy boots. Skinny children pressed behind their skinny mothers. Men dropped to their knees in the mud like their lives depended on it, because honestly, they kind of did. His butler, an ancient man named Bar in robes made entirely of patches, hobbled forward and delivered the situation with the enthusiasm of a man reading a funeral announcement. My lord, tradition says you collect a first meeting tax from the people today. Their options were to take their food or take their daughters. Because the people of Greywood could not even afford bread cut with sawdust. Lurian stood there in his boot-soaked boot and thought, great start. And then something happened that nobody in Greywood could have predicted. Something pinged inside his skull like a notification from another world. Because Lurian Wisteria was not actually from this one. He had woken up inside this body, in this broken empire with memories of a different life, a different era, a different set of rules entirely. And those rules had just activated something remarkable. Lord Population Dividend System initiated. For every registered living person in your territory, you receive 1 silver coin per day, automatically just for them being alive. Lurian's heart nearly stopped. 1 silver coin in this world buys 100 loaves of bread. A normal peasant family working an entire year saves maybe 30 copper coins. 1 silver is 100 copper. And he was getting 1 silver per person, per day, every single morning forever. He kept his face very still and asked Bar, as casually as he could manage, how many people live here exactly? Bar sighed, pulled out a moldy scroll, and said 836, my lord. We were 850, but a few have starved recently. 836 silver coins a day. Over 8 gold coins every single morning. A rich viscount with prime farmland makes 50 gold per year. Lurian could beat that in a week, lying completely still, doing absolutely nothing. He was grinning, practically floating, when he heard a thud. An old farmer who had been kneeling nearby pitched forward, face first into a puddle of sewage water. Twitched twice, stunned. Bar made a small cross on his chest, muttered something about the light god, and moved on. And right on cue, a notification chimed in Lurian's head. Territory population -1. Current count, 835. Tomorrow's income, 835 silver coins. Lurian's grin froze solid. That old man had not just died. That old man was 1 silver coin a day. 365 silver coins a year. Over 1,000 in 3 years. A walking, breathing income stream, permanently shut down. He yanked out his sword, pointed it at the body, and screamed at every guard within earshot. Pick him up. Pour water on him. Get me the best herb doctor in town right now. If he dies, none of you eat dinner tonight. In my territory, nothing dies without my permission. Not a person, not a dog, not even an ant. The peasants of Greywood swore they had never seen a nobleman lose his mind this fast. Not only did Lurian cancel the welcome tax entirely, he ordered his guards to carry the half-dead old farmer into a clean tent, like he was visiting royalty. This man, Lurian announced with complete sincerity, is the most valuable treasure in Greywood. He meant every word, just not in the way they thought. Back in his manor, which was a wooden box that screamed every time he sat down, he did the arithmetic. They had maybe 200 pounds of oats, half of it mixed with sand, supposed to last through winter. Meanwhile, 835 people were outside waiting to die. Lurian closed his eyes, thought the word withdraw, and his coin bag became 10 pounds heavier. He slammed it on the table and let it rip open. Over 800 silver coins poured out like a slot machine jackpot, rolling and clinking in the most beautiful symphony he had ever heard. Bar's knees buckled. His eyes went the size of dinner plates. Where in the name of everything holy did this come from? Don't ask, Lurian said, pointing at the pile like a general pointing at a battle map. Take to guards, ride to Red Leaf City, buy everything. White wheat flour, salted pork, barrels of malt beer, coarse salt, clean cloth. Not the garbage black bread made of sawdust, the good stuff. Bar stared at him, jaw hanging open. White wheat and salted meat for peasants. Screw the light god and his dietary opinions, Lurian said. In my territory, if I say they deserve white bread, they get white bread. The math was already running in his head. Even if he stuffed all 835 people until they looked like balloons, the cost was maybe 20 silver per day. They produced 835 silver just by breathing. For 1,000% profit margin. For 1,000%. Anyone who would not do this was a certified idiot. By evening, a dozen carts loaded with food rolled into the square, and Greywood lost its collective mind. 3 massive iron pots went up over roaring fires. Bags of snow-white flour dumped in. Thick chunks of fatty salted pork hacked off and tossed on top. Handfuls of coarse salt, which in this era was basically more expensive than gold. The smell hit the town like a wall. Rich, thick, meaty steam rolled through every cracked wall and broken door in Greywood. People who had been hiding in their shacks, waiting quietly to die, came crawling out like the dead answering a call they had given up hoping for. One man fainted from the smell alone, just dropped. That was how bad things had been. Lurian climbed the steps of his shack manor, looked down at the crowd, and made his announcement. The welcome tax is cancelled. Everyone, grab your bowls and line up. 1 big bowl of meat porridge and 1 white bread roll per person. As long as you are a citizen of Greywood, as long as you are breathing, I, Lurian Wisteria, personally guarantee you will eat your fill every single day. Silence. Total, absolute silence. And then, thud, 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 thud. All 830 of them dropped to their knees at once, like dominoes falling in mud. Men, women, grandmothers, toddlers, foreheads pressed into the dirt, sobbing, wailing, crying into the ground. The light god has answered our prayers. You must be a saint reborn. His system chimed on cue. Citizen loyalty, maximum. Territory stability, massively increased. Population status, rock solid. Lurian looked down at his weeping, devoted, kneeling flock, and he could not stop the grin spreading across his face. Eat up, he thought. Every spoonful keeps the coins flowing. You think you're eating meat porridge. You're maintaining my printing press. Daddy's quarterly earnings are looking fantastic. And that was only the beginning of what Greywood was about to become. The next morning, 6 in the morning, the most beautiful sound in the universe. Not birds, not music. A system notification. Daily settlement complete. Population, 835. 0 deaths. Payout, 835 silver coins. Lurian shot out of bed like it was Christmas morning. Thought the word withdraw, and hundreds of silver coins came raining down onto his sheets in a glittering pile. He grabbed a fistful and just listened to them clink together, scalp tingling, toes curling. Yesterday's grocery bill paid back in full, plus hundreds extra in pure profit. But his business brain kicked in fast. 8 gold a day was king-level money out here in the borderlands, sure. But if he ever wanted to raise an army, march back to the capital, and repay every noble who had destroyed his family, this was pocket change. The problem was obvious. Not enough people. 10,000 citizens meant 100 gold per day. 100,000 meant 1,000 gold daily. He needed more humans, and he needed them yesterday. And then, as if the universe read his business plan and said understood, his doors slammed open. Bar stumbled in, face white as paper. The neighboring Red Leaf Viscounty had a famine and a plague. The Viscount had kicked out over 10,000 landless refugees to save his own food supply. 3 to 4,000 of them were heading straight for Greywood right now, with cavalry chasing them with whips. Every baron in the area was already ordering their soldiers to shoot refugees on sight. In the medieval logic of this world, refugees meant disaster. Mouths to feed, diseases to spread, riots waiting to happen. Seal the gates, Bar begged, put archers on the walls. Lurian heard 3 to 4,000 people heading his way, and his brain went 3,000 people times 1 silver coin each times every single day, equals 3,000 silver. 30 gold coins daily. His current income would quadruple just by letting them in. He slapped his own thighs so hard the sound echoed off the walls. Everyone else is blind, he told Bar. Those aren't refugees. That's a mountain of gold that grew legs and is walking into my pocket by itself. New orders. He was already wrestling on his leather armor, hopping on one foot, screaming. Load every cart in town. All the leftover meat and flour, every guard grabs a weapon. Not to defend the walls. We're going to the border. We're rolling out the red carpet. An hour later, Lurian rode down the muddy highway at the head of a convoy of carts carrying giant steaming pots of hot porridge like a medieval food truck parade. Ahead of him, thousands of refugees, ragged clothes, bare feet, hollow eyes, dragging crying children through the snow. Behind them, red-leaf cavalry cracking whips at their backs. Every other territory had slammed its doors shut. These people were walking toward what they assumed was another wall, another rejection, another slow death in the wilderness. And then they saw a young nobleman on a chestnut horse, grinning so wide it was honestly kind of unsettling. Behind him, carts full of food with steam rising into the frozen air. Lurian drew his sword, filled his lungs, and screamed across the wasteland at 4,000 terrified strangers. Everything Red Leaf threw away, Greywood takes. All of it. If you swear you're my people, I don't care if you're old, young, ugly, or smell terrible. Free food, free housing, meat with every meal. 0 taxes. Now stop standing there and get into my arms, you beautiful people. Nobody moved. 3,000 people standing in the mud, staring at him like he was a serial killer with a soup cart. And honestly, he understood. In this world, when a nobleman smiled at you, it usually meant a very bad day was coming. Near the front of the crowd was an old man the refugees called Old Wolf, former soldier, busted leg, tough face, clutching his 5-year-old granddaughter, who looked like she hadn't eaten in a week. He was thinking one thing. This is a trap. Meanwhile, behind the refugees, the Red Leaf cavalry captain, a man named Carl, sat on his horse laughing. Well, Baron Lurian, so broke you're picking through other people's garbage now. Lurian didn't even look at him. Every second these people stood there was a second they might drop dead. And every dead refugee was a silver coin that would never jingle in his pocket. Time was literally money, and the clock was ticking. Bar, he said quietly. Open the lids. The wooden covers came off all 3 giant iron pots at once. What happened next was a weapon of mass persuasion. A tidal wave of meaty, weedy, salty steam erupted and hit the entire wasteland like a flavor bomb. 3,000 empty stomachs growled at exactly the same time. The ground actually vibrated. Old Wolf's legs gave out, not from weakness, from the smell alone. His granddaughter, who had been barely conscious in his arms, suddenly opened her eyes like she'd been resurrected and whispered one word. Grandpa. Meat. That was the cue. Lurian stood up in his saddle and pointed at a pile of wooden boards and charcoal pencils they had brought. His entire immigration system was this. Write your name on a board. Can't write? Press your thumb in charcoal and stamp it. Once you stamp, you are officially a citizen of Greywood, and that pot of porridge is yours. Old Wolf broke first. The man threw away every survival instinct he had, hobbled to the front on his bad leg, and slammed his blackened thumb onto the wood so hard it almost cracked. His logic was simple. If my granddaughter can eat one real bowl of meat porridge before they kill us, then it's worth it. The instant his thumb hit the board, ding. Legal citizen 1. Current population, 836. Lurian's eyes ignited. He snatched the ladle right out of the cook's hands, dove it to the bottom of the pot where all the good chunks sank, and scooped up the thickest, meatiest serving physically possible. He even handpicked the biggest chunk of fatty pork and dropped it into the old man's wooden bowl. Excellent work, soldier. Eat up. Chew carefully. Don't choke. You need to stay alive. Do you hear me? He was looking at this old crippled refugee with more tenderness than he had shown any human being into lifetimes. Old Wolf stood there holding his steaming bowl, completely frozen. He looked at the pork, looked at Lurian smiling at him, looked at the pork again. No whip, no trick. Just real meat, given by a real nobleman who looked genuinely thrilled to see him. The old soldier crashed to his knees in the mud, tears streaming, fed the porridge to his granddaughter spoonful by tiny spoonful, while pressing his forehead into the ground. You are mercy itself. I, Gareth, swear my worthless life belongs to you forever. And just like that, the dam broke. 3,000 people went absolutely feral. Let me stamp. I was here first. My whole family, 7 people, register all of us. Ding ding, ding, ding 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 ding. The notifications overlapped, stacked, tripped over each other like a slot machine hitting jackpot on every single pull. Every thumbprint was a silver coin. Every dirty fingerprint was a daily deposit. Lurian stood there watching thousands of people stampede toward his registration planks, fighting each other for the privilege of becoming his citizens. His grin stretched so wide he may have pulled a muscle in his face. Bring your grandma, bring your weird uncle, bring the baby. Especially the baby. That kid's got 70 years of silver coins in him. Right in the middle of his beautiful registration party. The clanking of armor announced an unwelcome guest. Carl, the cavalry captain, rode up with his soldiers, dripping sarcasm thick enough to spread on bread. Baron Lurian, I didn't realize the exile broke your brain too. 3,000 walking liabilities and you're feeding them white flour and salted meat. My refugees all flinched and shrank when they heard his voice. Classic bully effect. Lurian didn't even look up. Carl, you're standing at the border of Greywood territory. These are my citizens now. Watch your mouth. Carl threw his head back and laughed. Give it 3 days, Baron. Your piggy bank will be empty, and these citizens will rip you apart and boil your bones for soup. Lurian smiled. Bigger than him. Wider than him. The kind of smile that makes people uncomfortable. A sparrow can never understand the ambitions of an eagle, he said. Then he reached into his coin bag, pulled out a fistful of silver, and tossed them up and down in his palm. Clink, clink, clink. Every eyeball on that field locked onto those coins like moths to a lantern. Hey Carl, quick question. I heard there are still 1,000 to 2,000 refugees stuck back in Red Leaf territory. The ones too weak to walk. Carl's eyes stayed glued to the coins. Yeah, maybe 1,000 or 2. Old, sick, half dead. They'll die in a ditch by tonight. What a waste. Lurian winced like he'd been personally insulted. He threw the entire handful of coins, 30 silver, at Carl's horse's feet, scattered in the dirt like the most expensive confetti ever. That's a tip for your trouble. Now go back and tell your Viscount every refugee still breathing, even barely, load them on carts and deliver them to Greywood. And one more thing. His voice went up a notch. His eyes were practically glowing. From now on, any refugees, beggars, dying slaves, anyone that Red Leaf or any nearby territory doesn't want, ship them to me. 5 copper coins per head, delivered alive. That is my standing offer. Dead silence. Carl and his boys stared at him like he had just announced he was marrying a goat. Paying for refugees, the ones nobody wants, the old, the sick, the useless. This was like walking into a garbage dump and offering cash for every piece of trash. It made 0 sense to anyone without a magical income system hardwired into their skull. But Carl was greedy, and greedy people don't ask questions when money is lying on the ground. You said it, Baron. No take-backs. He practically fell off his horse scrambling for the coins. By sundown tomorrow, I'll personally deliver 1,000 pieces of your precious citizens right to your doorstep. He rode off cackling, absolutely convinced he was scamming a madman. Meanwhile, Bar was hyperventilating beside Lurian. My lord, we can barely feed 3,000. If 2,000 more show up, Greywood will collapse. Collapse? Lurian watched the registration counter tick upward in his head like a stock market on the best day in history. Bar, you sweet innocent old man, he said. He is not delivering beggars. He is delivering money printers. 5,000 total population meant 5,000 silver per day, 50 gold coins daily. A wealthy Viscount's entire annual income, hitting his account every 24 hours. Carl thought he was dumping garbage on Lurian. He was hand-delivering a gold mine. Give trap with a bow, charging only 5 coppers per bar of gold. Worst negotiator in the history of this continent. Best business partner he had ever had. Night fell over Greywood and 3,000. 412 brand new citizens camped outside town around bonfires, sleeping on cold dirt. But every belly was full. People lay there with dreamy smiles, thinking they had died and gone somewhere better. Ironic, given that Lurian was desperately trying to prevent exactly that. Old Wolf had appointed himself personal bodyguard without being asked, sitting against a tree stump with his granddaughter asleep in his arms, cleaning a rusty knife and muttering, "Anyone touches Lord Lurian, and I'll bite their throat out." 1 bowl of porridge, and the man had become a ride-or-die enforcer. Best employee retention program in history. Inside his manor, Lurian was pacing at 5:55 in the morning, staring at the clock hard enough to melt it. Please, he thought. Don't let anyone freeze to death tonight. Medieval knights killed healthy people. These were starving refugees who had just eaten their first real meal in weeks. He had ordered Bar to burn every dead tree in town for bonfires, not out of kindness, out of pure financial anxiety. Every frozen body was a deleted deposit. 5:58, 5:59, 6 in the morning. Ding, daily settlement complete. Current territory population 4,247. All new citizens survived the night. Today's payout for 1,247 silver coins. His brain literally exploded. Withdraw. Withdraw everything. Now. What happened next was not a bag of coins. Not even close. A solid waterfall of metal materialized in midair above his bedroom floor. Crash, clinkety-clank. 4,247 silver coins poured from the ceiling, like the world's most expensive rainstorm, and slammed into the wooden floor. The pile was half a meter tall. It knocked over his table. It filled half the room. His sad little shack bedroom looked like a dragon's treasure vault. 42 gold coins and 47 silver. In one day. A normal border baron doesn't make that in a year. He threw himself face first into the pile like a man diving into a swimming pool, shoved both hands deep into the coins, and wiggled his fingers. I'm rich. I'm actually rich. He lay there for a full minute, marinating in money, having a moment. Then his business brain slapped his happy brain across the face. This isn't safe yet. He stood up and looked out at the pale morning light, and felt something cold that had nothing to do with the weather. Fear. Full bellies don't mean anything if your lungs freeze. One bad flu outbreak could chain into a full plague. If that happened, his 4,000 daily silver coins would evaporate faster than spit on a hot stove. This was not charity. This was asset protection. He was a fund manager, and his portfolio was made of humans sleeping in mud. Bar, get in here now. The old man scrambled inside, looked at the mountain of silver coins consuming half the room, and his eyeballs appeared to attempt escaping his face. By the light god, have you mastered alchemy? Shut up and grab bags. Lurian was already throwing sacks at him. Get every guard. Ride to Red Leaf City. Buy wood, stone, thatch, warm fabric, medicine for colds. Buy the store. Buy the warehouse. All of it. But what are the building materials for? What do you think? Houses. He needed his 4,000 citizens in warm, solid, roofed buildings before winter hit. Because if even one of his precious money generators caught pneumonia and died, that was not a tragedy. That was a quarterly loss. And Baron Lurian Wisteria did not accept losses. When the sun came up, all 4,000 of his citizens stood in the town square like the world's saddest army. Original Greywood peasants on one side, fresh refugees on the other. Everyone staring up at him like baby birds waiting to be fed. He had changed into a sharp new hunting outfit because if you're going to make history, you should at least look good doing it. People, winter is coming. Starting today, Greywood begins a massive construction project. Hundreds of new houses, every leaky broken shack demolished and rebuilt from scratch. A murmur rippled through the crowd. He could read their thoughts. Old Wolf's face tightened up. There it is, the catch. He fed us so we'd have the energy to work ourselves to death. And honestly, Old Wolf was not wrong to think that. In this world, lords ordered peasants into forced labor constantly. It was called corvée. Work until you collapse. Eat slop. If you die, nobody cares. Every single person in that square had already accepted their fate. Okay. One amazing meal. Now we pay with our backs. Fair enough. And that is when Lurian dropped the announcement. That made 4,000 brains short-circuit simultaneously. To reward your hard work, every adult who participates in construction will receive, in addition to 3 full meals a day, 2 copper coins per day as wages. He drew his sword and pointed it at the sky for effect. The sound of a computer crashing, that blue screen of death silence. That was what 4,000 brains sounded like breaking at the same moment. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. The wind whistled through the trees. Old Wolf was blinking so fast it looked medical. Bar grabbed a fistful of his own beard and yanked it so hard his eyes watered. He was checking if he was dreaming. Paying peasants, giving actual money to people who were legally classified as property. People who did not even technically own their own bodies. This was not just breaking a custom. This was spitting in the face of 1,000 years of tradition. One brave soul from the original Greywood crew raised a trembling hand. My lord, you're saying we build houses for ourselves, you feed us, and you pay us money on top. Lurian glared. Did I stutter? I have more money than I know what to do with. Build fast. Build solid. Don't freeze to death. He was not being generous. He was being efficient. An unpaid worker drags their feet, takes breaks, does the absolute minimum. But to copper coins to people who had never held money in their lives, that was rocket fuel. Liquid motivation injected directly into the bloodstream. For 1,000 workers times 2 coppers equaled 80 silver coins per day spent on wages. His daily income from those same people was 4,247 silver coins. He was spending less than 2% of his earnings on labor. In any other era, that would make him the most cartoonishly exploitative employer alive. But here, in this world, he was basically performing a miracle. Old Wolf's eyes went red. Not angry red. The kind of red that happens when a man who has been beaten down his entire life discovers That maybe the universe is not completely rotten after all. He clenched his fist until his knuckles turned white, threw his arm into the air, and screamed with everything his old soldier lungs had. Long live Lord Lurian. For our lord, for our new homes. I'll cut down 10 trees today even if my hands fall off. Long live the Lord. May the light God bless Greywood forever. The roar was deafening. For 1,000 people who had been walking corpses yesterday were now vibrating with energy. Eyes on fire, veins popping, ready to fight God himself if he stood between them and a lumber yard. They grabbed stone axes, wooden shovels, rusty saws, anything with an edge, and charged toward the forest like a barbarian horde doing carpentry. To copper coins. That was all it took. Out at the quarry, Old Wolf was swinging his pickaxe like a man possessed, hands covered in blood blisters, not flinching. His friend Pete, a big full-bearded man, was hauling stones the size of toddlers onto carts while wheezing like a dying accordion. Old Wolf, slow down. Even a mill donkey gets a water break. Shut your bird mouth, Pete. Old Wolf didn't even turn around. Clang, clang. Sparks flying off the rock. When I was in the army stabbing half-orcs for a living, all I got was stale bread that tasted like someone's armpit. To coins, Pete. Pete was doing the thing where he desperately wants to believe something good, but his entire life experience keeps screaming it's a trap. Nobles don't give money back. They take money. That's what nobles do. It makes sense because Lord Lurian is a saint, Old Wolf screamed, smashing his pickaxe down so hard sparks flew like fireworks, arguing about whether kindness was real while building houses at 3 times normal speed. Beautiful. Then sunset came, the horn blew. Payday. For 1,000 mudcake, sweat-soaked workers lined up in a queue so long it wrapped around the camp. Old Wolf shoved to the front, eyes locked onto the little piles of copper coins on Bar's table like they were diamonds. Bar adjusted his monocle, scratched his quill across the parchment. 5 trees felled. 10 loads of stone hauled. He dropped the copper coins into Old Wolf's bloody palm. The old soldier stared at those 2 little copper discs, cold, heavy, real. And then, Old Wolf shoved both coins into his mouth and bit down. He needed his teeth to confirm what his brain refused to believe. The bitter tang of copper hit his tongue, and the man's whole face crumbled. They're real, dear God. They're real money. Pete, next in line, got his 2 coins, stared at them for half a second, and collapsed to his knees sobbing, kissing the coins like holy relics. Full on making out with copper pieces in the mud. Tears, the whole show. The entire camp turned into the strangest celebration Lurian had ever witnessed. Grown men crying, women clutching pennies to their chests like newborn babies, old people holding coins up to firelight and just staring. Nobody was tired anymore. Their eyes glowed green in the dark. 2 copper coins per person, that was what it cost to create an army of construction maniacs. Then hooves. Carl rode up to the town gate with his cavalry, and behind them, a long shambling trail of what looked like the world's most depressing parade. 2,000 more refugees, barely alive, coughing, shivering, wearing clothes that were more holes than fabric. Oh my dear Baron Lurian, Carl was practically singing with sarcasm. As promised, 2,500 rotting wretches pulled fresh from the ditches. I wonder if your treasury can still afford a pot of soup. Bar took one look and nearly fainted. It's over. We're finished. They'll eat us into bankruptcy. But Lurian was looking at those 2,000 shivering, coughing, half-dead refugees the way a hungry man looks at an all-you-can-eat buffet. 2,000 new citizens, 2,000 new daily silver coins, 20 more gold hitting his account every single morning. Oh, Carl, my brother, my angel sent from the darkness itself. He grabbed the fat linen bag and hurled it at Carl's horse's feet. It hit the ground with a deeply satisfying thunk. 10,000 copper coins, 100 silver. Your delivery fee is agreed. And Carl, if you ever get more of these, you come to me first. I'll take 10,000, 20,000. I'll take them all. Carl opened the bag, saw it stuffed with real coins, and his eye twitched. He looked at the coins, looked at the 2,000 dying people he had just delivered, looked back at Lurian. You absolute lunatic, he muttered under his breath. You're going to die. Then he took the money and galloped away, happy and confused. Lurian turned to his 2,000 shining new citizens, gave them his warmest smile, and called for the pots to be fired up. Bar, quickly. Don't let my babies get cold. Register every single one of them. Every thumbprint was a silver coin. Every cough was something he needed to cure. Carl thought he had delivered garbage. He had delivered next month's payroll. By the count Lurian checked at his desk that night, swirling wine like a medieval Wall Street trader waiting for markets to open. Greywood now held 6,297 registered citizens. In a world where wars and famine had made people scarcer than good hygiene, That was practically a small city. He watched the clock tick towards 6 in the morning. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ding, daily settlement complete. Population, 6,297. Payout, 6,297 silver coins. Withdraw. What came next was no longer a rainstorm. This was a full-blown avalanche. Boom, crash, clinkety-clank. 6,000 silver coins materialized above his tiny bedroom and came down like a meteor. Made of money. His table collapsed. The pile reached his waist. A stray coin bounced off the mountain and hit him square in the nose. He saw stars. Gold stars, which felt appropriate. 63 gold coins per day. In this world's economy, that could buy a 3-story villa in the capital's fanciest neighborhood daily. And then the smell hit him. Through the cracks in his walls, a wave of stench rolled in from the refugee camp so powerful it should have been classified as a biological weapon. 6,000 people who had not bathed in years. Not months. Years. These people thought soap was witchcraft and bathing invited demons. Now picture 6,000 people's worth of waste, everywhere. On the ground. Next to where they slept. Next to where they ate. With the population past 6,000, the stink had reached a critical level. But the smell was not what scared Lurian. What scared him was what comes after the smell. Plague. One epidemic. That was all it would take. One nasty disease ripping through 6,000 unwashed humans. And his 63 daily gold coins would drop to 0 faster than he could say wash your hands. He kicked his door open, stared into the morning mist, and made a decision that would shatter every medieval tradition alive. Half an hour later, 6,000 porridge-filled citizens were staring up at him in the town square. Citizens of Greywood, I am issuing the Greywood Absolute Cleanliness Act. Rule 1. Half of all construction teams stop building houses immediately and start digging to massive sewage pits and public toilets built downwind from the town by yesterday. Rule 2. Anyone caught doing their business anywhere other than the designated toilets loses their daily wages on the first offense. No meat porridge for 3 days on the second. Rule 3. I am building for public bathhouses every evening. Every single one of you will wash yourselves until you are as clean as a peeled egg. Refuse, and say goodbye to your paycheck. The crowd erupted in confused chaos. Old Wolf scratched his lice-infested hair and raised his hand with genuine bewilderment. But my gracious lord, pooping on the ground is tradition. Our fathers did it. Their fathers did it. Making us walk to a special pooping building is cruel and unusual punishment for our intestines. Lurian hit him with the one argument no grandfather can survive. Oh really, Gareth? So you want your little granddaughter sleeping next to human waste and catching a deadly stomach disease? You want her to die because you couldn't walk 50 extra steps. Old Wolf's face went white like someone had pulled the plug on him. He did a complete 180 in half a second flat. Nobody poops on the ground, he roared at the crowd, instantly becoming Lurian's chief sanitation enforcer. Anyone who drops a load outside the toilets, I will personally handle it. Thank you, Gareth. That's enough to tail, Lurian said. Word got off fast that some lunatic baron was throwing gold around like confetti. Because a merchant showed up. His name was Hobby. Fat, shrewd, tiny eyes that could smell a copper coin from 3 kingdoms away. He rolled up in a cart full of low-grade beer and moldy linen, dragged by a horse that appeared to have given up on life. His cart driver was terrified. Boss, are we really going to the place with 6,000 starving refugees? They'll eat us. Shut your mouth. Hobby had slapped his fat belly and grinned. That baron's butler was in Red Leaf City yesterday dropping dozens of gold coins. Buying half the market. Where there's gold, Hobby goes. Even if it's a toilet in hell. But when they crested the hill and saw Greywood, both of them nearly swallowed their tongues. No corpses, no plague, no apocalypse. Instead, thousands of ragged but energized people swarming like army ants, hauling massive logs, carrying boulders, chanting work songs in unison, foundations going up, walls rising. The whole place looked like someone had kicked an anthill. Except the ants were on performance-enhancing drugs. And in the distance, the part that really broke Hobby's brain, hundreds of people digging enormous pits with extreme dedication, like it was the most important task in human history. Holy like God, the driver stammered. Are they digging mass graves? No, you idiot. Hobby's eyeballs were practically falling out. Those maniacs are building sewers and public toilets for peasants. Even the richest dukes in the capital didn't build dedicated sanitation facilities for their people. This baron was constructing luxury restrooms for refugees in the middle of nowhere. Lurian walked out to meet them with Bar hobbling behind, arms wide open like a used car salesman greeting his favorite customer. Welcome, dear merchant, to the rising miracle of Greywood. Hobby slapped on his sleaziest salesman smile. I've brought fine linen and beer. As for the price, well, he rubbed his fingers together. You understand, bandits on the road. Skip the pitch. How much rough cloth? How much soap? Lurian already had his answer mapped out. Hobby smelled desperation and decided to go for the throat. Well, my lord, for everything I have. That's going to be at least 30 gold coins. A 300% markup over actual value. He was already rehearsing his apology for when Lurian screamed at him. Lurian didn't even blink. He snapped his fingers. Bar staggered forward carrying a sack so heavy he looked like he was about to herniate something. Untied the top and poured. 3,000 silver coins hit the mud at Hobby's feet like a shiny landslide. A mountain of silver gleaming in the morning light, piled up against his boots. That's 30 gold and silver. Lurian said in the same tone someone uses to order a sandwich. Count it. Oh, and I'm adding a 10 gold coin deposit on top. Hobby's knees gave out. He dropped straight into the mud, voice vibrating. 10 gold deposit for what? Lurian crouched down and patted his chubby cheek. Go back to Red Leaf City. Tell your guild. Tell every merchant in the entire city. I want all the soap, all the cloth, all the salt, all the medicine. Strip the shelves bare. Load it on carts. Bring it here. He leaned in close, eyes doing that burning thing again. Tell every fat merchant that Greywood is buying survival supplies at premium prices, unlimited. No cap, no ceiling. You bring it, I buy it. Hobby was cradling silver coins against his chest, crying actual tears, snot running down his face. You are the god of wealth walking among mortals. I'll bring everything. He scrambled onto his cart and whipped that horse into the fastest gallop of its miserable life, disappearing down the road in a cloud of mud and greed. Bar watched him go, wringing his hands. My lord, aren't we spending a bit fast? Lurian glanced at his system panel. Population health status. Thanks to new shelters and the sanitation revolution, extremely healthy, zero disease risk. Zero death projections. He put his hand on Bar's bony shoulder and smiled. Baller, my sweet old friend. Someday you'll understand what it truly means to earn gold by the bucket, while doing absolutely nothing. Every coin spent on soap was an insurance policy on 63 gold coins of daily income. Every toilet was a firewall against plague. Every warm coat was a guarantee that his money generator survived. Hobby thought he had ripped Lurian off at 300% markup. His people gave him 4,000% returns just by breathing. He was not the one being scammed. He was scamming the entire medieval economic system. The next morning, at 5:59, Lurian was not pacing. He was sitting at his new oak desk, spinning a steel dagger between his fingers like a man who had decided to be calm about things for once. Ding, for new babies born. Population adjusted. For brand new humans who had done absolutely nothing except get born, and they were already on his payroll. Zero training required. Just cry, breathe, and generate 1 silver coin per day for the next 70 years. Best employees he had ever had. But his business brain had finally outpaced his greedy brain for once. Money is great, he muttered to himself, but without a sharp enough sword to protect it. Money is just an invitation to get robbed. He had been spending like a madman, carts full of silver rolling into Red Leaf City every day, buying out entire markets, tipping cavalry captains with 100-coin bags. He was supposed to be a broke, exiled, disgraced baron who had been kicked out of the capital with nothing. Anyone with 2 functioning brain cells would start asking where the money was coming from. If Red Leaf's Viscount found out, he would invade by Thursday. If news reached the capital, the same people who had destroyed his family would send an army to finish the job. He was a piglet rolling in gold in a forest full of wolves. Time to get smart. Bar, get in here. The old man shuffled in, instinctively ducking as he crossed the doorway, fully expecting another silver avalanche from the ceiling. Lurian got serious, actually completely serious. No crazy eyes, no screaming, no coin throwing. He put on his best sad, suffering, noble face. Oscar-worthy performance coming. Bar, the truth is this money is the last gift from my mother. Bar froze. Your mother, sir? She came from the most powerful merchant family in the south. Before I was exiled, she secretly sent me a spatial ring containing her life savings. Complete fabrication. Absolute invention. 100% premium invention. But in a world where spatial magic existed, this was the most believable cover story possible. Exiled noble, rich mother, emergency fund and a magic ring. Everyone on this continent would nod and say, yeah, that tracks. But here's the thing, Lurian continued, voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. This money is finite. Every coin I spend is gone forever. Total lie. It refilled every morning at 6 like clockwork. But Bar didn't need to know that. And if the Red Leaf Viscount or any nearby lords find out I'm sitting on a fortune, what happens? Bar went pale. He understood medieval politics better than anyone. They'd come for us like jackals smelling blood. Exactly. So here's what we do. No more big moves. No more dumping pure silver at merchant feet. Fine hobby. Slip him a few coins. Tell him to spread a story that Lurian sold his mother's magic amulet for emergency cash, and that the money is almost gone. Practically broke. Tragic, really. Bar's eyes lit up. A cover story. Brilliant. And from now on, no more shiny new silver coins for purchases. Go to the black market. Exchange for worn, chipped, ugly coins. Buy from different merchants every time. Small orders. Different routes. Spread it out. We need to look poor, Bar. We need every lord in the region to look at Greywood and think that poor idiot is going bankrupt. Feeding refugees. Bar was nodding so fast his head looked like it might detach. Lurian walked to the window and stared out at the waking camp. Smoke rising from cooking fires. The distant sound of hammers and saws. His people building their new homes. His expression went cold. The money we can hide. But teeth, he ran his thumb along the edge of his dagger. Teeth need to start getting sharpened. He was the richest man in the region pretending to be the poorest. He had a gold mine that literally built its own houses. He had loyalty so intense that Old Wolf would bite someone's throat out over a bowl of porridge. But none of that mattered if a viscount with 50 knights showed up tomorrow. Money buys food. Money buys buildings. Money buys soap and toilets and merchant loyalty. But money does not stop a sword. Phase 1, get rich, was complete. Phase 2, get dangerous, was about to begin. Lunchtime, porridge bubbling as usual, but today Lurian had something different cooking. New order. No construction wages today. Every male between 15 and 40 with working arms and legs. Report to the East Field immediately. 1,500 men showed up looking nervous as cats in a room full of rocking chairs. Pete in the back was practically vibrating with anxiety. Old Wolf. What is happening? Is the Lord kicking us out? I just got used to eating. Shut your bird mouth, Pete, Old Wolf snapped, though even he was sweating through his shirt. Lurian walked out wearing head-to-toe black leather armor instead of his usual noble outfit. Sword on his hip, no smile, full military energy. Time to scare these boys a little. Men of Greywood, quick question. These past few days, have you been eating well, sleeping warm? Yes, full bellies. Praise the Lord. 1,500 voices hit him like a wall. Good. He let the smile drop off his face like a rock. Now let me ask you something else. Do you really think in a world where even dogs bite each other for scraps, that you can just sit here eating white bread and collecting paychecks forever? Dead quiet. He had their attention. Yesterday I received reports. Red Leaf Cavalry has been circling our borders. Bandits in the wilderness are grouping up. They can smell your meat porridge from miles away. He let that sink in, then twisted the knife. They want to storm into Greywood, steal your bread, burn your half-built houses, and sell your wives and daughters. The breathing got heavy. Eyes went red. Fists clenched, jaws tightened. These men were not soldiers. They were starving nobodies who had just tasted dignity for the first time. And the thought of losing it made them absolutely feral. Old Wolf exploded out of the crowd like a cannonball. My lord, let them come. I'll bite their throats out with my teeth if I have to. Perfect. That is exactly the kind of crazy I need. I pointed at him. Gareth, step forward. From today, you are the captain of Greywood's new militia, the Iron Guard. Lurian clapped his hands, and his guards wheeled out several carts covered in oil tarps. Dramatic pause. Full eye contact with the crowd. He ripped the tarps off. Sunlight hit hundreds of iron spears, swords, and thick leather armor sets, all laid out in neat rows, edges sharpened to a wicked gleam. Not pretty. No fancy engravings. But sharp. The kind of sharp that says, I will go through you like butter. He had been having bars smuggle these in through black markets across multiple territories for days. Small batches, different sellers, no paper trail. Because in medieval law, peasants owning weapons was roughly as legal as a fish riding a bicycle. But laws were written by people with armies. And he was about to have one. I need 500 men who aren't afraid to die. He drew his sword and pointed it skyward. Join the Iron Guard. No more hauling rocks. Pay goes up to 5 copper coins per day. Meet at every meal. Your families get first priority for the new houses. But if enemies come, you stand at the front, between them and Greywood, with your bodies and your blood. If you're willing to sell your life for this, come get your weapon. Old Wolf did not hesitate for a tenth of a second. He charged up to the platform, grabbed an iron crossword with both shaking hands, dropped to one knee, and roared, My sword fights for you. Pete was right behind him, eyes red, tears streaming, snatching a spear. Count me in. I am never going hungry again. They swarmed the carts like shoppers on the year's biggest sale, pushing, shoving, grabbing weapons, swearing loyalty oaths through gritted teeth. These were not warriors. These were starving men who had been given food, money, and purpose for the first time in their miserable lives. And they would kill to keep it. In under 30 minutes, 500 weapon sets were gone. Every single one. Lurian looked down at his brand new army. Formation terrible. Discipline non-existent. Training zero. But their eyes looked like a pack of wolves that had just been fed steak and told someone was coming to take the next one. You cannot buy that kind of motivation. You cannot train it. That comes from men who know exactly what starvation feels like and have decided they would rather die swinging a sword than go back. The Iron Guard. 500 former peasants, former refugees, former nobodies, now armed, fed, paid, and absolutely back against the wall loyal. Total daily cost, 25 silver coins. Less than 0.5% of his daily income. He had just bought an entire private army for the price of a nice dinner. And anyone who wanted to touch his 6,000 daily silver coins would have to go through 500 full-bellied madmen who would genuinely, enthusiastically, happily chew their faces off. The portfolio now had security. The dragon had teeth. Come get some. 30 miles from his beautiful money factory, in a nasty stretch of pine forest, a one-eyed psychopath known as Baron Bloodblade was sitting on a log polishing a sword. So beat up it looked like someone had been using it to chop firewood. 300 killers under his command. Deserters, broke mercenaries, wanted murderers. A rat-faced scout came scurrying out of the woods, practically foaming. Boss, I bribed a stable boy at the Merchant Guild. That exiled Baron Lurian sold his mother's magic amulet for a fortune. Thousands of silver. Maybe gold. Lurian's beautiful cover story, the one he had specifically planted through hobby to make himself look broke, had worked perfectly. Perfectly. Instead of hearing that poor Baron is almost bankrupt, these geniuses heard that poor Baron recently had thousands of silver. Thanks, medieval telephone game. And get this, the scout continued, drooling. He's feeding 6,000 refugees. White flour porridge with salted pork every day. And his security, 0 nights. Just a bunch of skeleton-thin peasants. One of Bloodblade's lieutenants burst out laughing. Is this kid running a charity? 6,000 helpless lambs, mountains of food, and no army. Boss, this is a gift. In their heads, the math was simple. 300 armed, battle-tested killers versus 6,000 unarmed peasants equaled the easiest rate of all time. Standard medieval bandit business plan. Sell the young women, force the men into labor, dispose of the elderly and children. Bloodblade stood up, jammed his chipped sword into its sheath, and grinned with his one good eye. Nobody gets drunk tonight. After dark, we move. 300 animals howled into the trees like hyenas who had spotted a wounded deer, and slithered into the darkness toward Greywood. At that exact same moment, Lurian was dealing with a completely different crisis. Bar had just handed him a report, tiptoeing like a man delivering bad news to a dragon. My lord, during sewer construction yesterday, there was a cave-in. 2 workers were badly hurt. The old herb farmer did his best, but one of them passed away 30 minutes ago. Lurian's face went dark enough to block out the sun. Dead. One of his people dead. 1 silver coin per day. 365 per year for decades. Revenue stream gone, account terminated. The other one, he said through clenched teeth. You pump him full of the most expensive medicine that exists. I don't care if he never walks again. A breathing man is worth infinitely more than a healthy corpse. And then the horn outside. Not a happy horn. Not a dinner's ready horn. The kind of horn that makes your blood freeze. Enemy attack. Bandits, prepare for battle. His hand went to his sword before his brain even caught up. 300 armed bandits, coming for his town. His food. His people. His 6,000 silver coins per day. Oh, Bloodblade, you poor stupid one-eyed idiot. You think you're raiding a helpless refugee camp with no defenses. You have no idea that 2 days ago he armed 500 men who would rather eat your face than lose their first paycheck. You brought 300 hyenas to a town full of wolves, who just learned what a full stomach feels like. This was going to be fun. Midnight, torches flickering along Greywood's perimeter. Bloodblade rode up on a horse so skinny it looked embarrassed, squinted his one good eye at Lurian's wooden fence, and laughed. Charge! Burn it! Show these dirt farmers how the wilderness works. 300 screaming maniacs with rusty swords and spiked clubs came pouring out of the darkness, fully expecting Lurian's people to drop to their knees and beg for mercy. What they got instead was a sound Lurian found extremely satisfying. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Dozens of hand-sharpened wooden javelins screamed out of dark trenches and punched through the first wave of bandits like they were made of wet paper. A dozen men went down before they understood what was happening. Blood spraying, screams ripping through the night air. It's a trap. Bloodblade's one eye went very wide. Behind the fence, a wall of iron spear points rose up in the darkness like the teeth of some massive beast. Greywood Iron Guard formation. Old Wolf stood at the front of the line, strapped head to toe in leather armor. Eyes so bloodshot they practically glowed red. He looked like a rabid animal that had been given a sword and told biting was also acceptable. When those alarm horns blew, Lurian's 500 Iron Guard soldiers had been finishing their late-night snack. A special bonus meal he had approved for night patrol shifts. Because well-fed soldiers fight better than hungry ones. These guys were his investment protection. Every single one of them looked at the sleeping camp behind them, their wives, their kids, their half-built houses, the 5 copper coins waiting tomorrow morning, the meat porridge, the dignity, the first good thing that had ever happened in their garbage lives. Then they looked at the bandits coming to take all of it away. Not one man stepped back. Old Wolf raised his sword and screamed with the voice of a demon being exorcised. Lord Lurian gave us life. He gave us dignity. And now these sewer rats want our white bread, want to burn our houses. The Lord said, retreat 1 step. Your whole family starves. Kill 1 bandit to silver coins reward. Yeah, he said that, and he meant it. To silver per kill. Expensive, maybe, but dead bandits cannot come back for round 2. And soldiers fighting like they had a loot system was worth every penny. 500 former peasants charged into battle like medieval berserkers hopped on righteous fury. And good nutrition. 0 formal training, but they had sharpened iron, full stomachs, and the kind of desperate rage that only comes from people who know exactly what starvation feels like and have chosen to never go back. Pete, sweet nervous Pete, locked eyes with a massive bandit climbing over the fence. A man twice his size. Pete didn't dodge, didn't flinch, didn't blink. He screamed, rammed his iron spear through the man with both hands, and kept pushing until the body hit the ground. Don't touch my porridge, you fat pig. And then, even though the bandit was very obviously and completely dead, Pete stabbed him about 15 more times just to make absolutely sure. The battlefield turned into a nightmare for the bandits. Blood, mud, screaming, body parts where body parts shouldn't be. 300 hardened killers getting absolutely shredded by farmers with sharp sticks, and murder in their eyes. These are supposed to be helpless refugees. Why are they not stopping? Bloodblade watched his men dropping like wheat in a hailstorm, and finally his one remaining brain cell fired. Retreat, fall back. But that was me coming in from the side flank with a few dozen of my best guards on horseback, cutting off the escape route like a steel door slamming shut. Lurian's face was not happy. Scattered on the muddy battlefield among the bandit corpses were a few of his men. Iron Guard soldiers. His soldiers dead. Every single one of them was 1 silver coin per day that would never come back. Walking revenue streams, permanently terminated. He stared at Bloodblade and his surviving men with the kind of cold fury that lives at the intersection of genuine anger and financial loss. Keep the leader alive. I want to know where he hid his money, everyone else, not one survivor. The fight was over by 4 in the morning. 260-something bandits turned into permanent decorations on the muddy ground. 30-odd survivors, including Bloodblade himself, got their ankle tendons sliced and were tied to wooden posts in the town square. 6,000 citizens stood around in the torchlight, staring at the prisoners with the kind of cold hatred that makes professional executioners uncomfortable. Old Wolf limped up to Lurian. His left arm had a gash so deep you could see bone, blood dripping from his fingers. But the man stood at perfect attention, chest out like he was at a parade. My lord. The Iron Guard held the line. Not one bandit made it into camp. Then his voice cracked. But we lost 15 brothers. 8 more badly wounded. 15. 15 dead soldiers meant 15 silver coins gone every morning, forever. 5,000. For 175 silver coins per year. For decades. These bandits hadn't just killed his men. They had reached into his wallet and ripped out pages from a checkbook he could never replace. This wasn't murder. This was financial terrorism. He stormed over to Bloodblade, who was tied to a post, sweating through a face full of blood. Noble Baron, I surrender. By tradition, I'll pay ransom. I know about a secret treasure in Red Leaf territory. I can bring you more than. Lurian grabbed his greasy hair, yanked his head up, and stared directly into his eyes. You stupid pig. Do you have any idea what you just did? You killed 15 of my citizens. You could drag the entire Red Leaf Castle to my doorstep, and it wouldn't cover what you owe me. And before Bloodblade could open his mouth to beg again, The sword moved. Quick, clean, done. Long live the Lord. 6,000 people erupted. The noise was deafening. They had just watched a nobleman personally execute a bandit leader to avenge common peasants. In their world, that never happened. Lords didn't care when peasants died. Lords didn't get angry for their sake. Lords didn't get revenge. Lurian had become more than a generous employer. He had become a full-blown religion. But the bandit raid had taught him something he couldn't ignore. He sat alone in the bloody town square on a wooden chair as the sun came up, doing math in his head. The iron knot in his chest slowly loosening as the system chimed at 6 in the morning. Daily settlement complete. Deaths yesterday, 16. Current population, 6,285. Today's payout, 6,285 silver coins. Lost a chunk of meat, but the plate was still full. He leaned back in his bloody chair, crossed his legs, and felt the corners of his mouth slowly curl into the most cold-blooded capitalist grin the medieval world had ever seen. The bandits came for his gold and got slaughtered. Bloodblade bet his life against Lurian's bottom line and lost. And tomorrow morning at 6, the coins would fall again. And the morning after that, and the one after that. The machine would keep printing, and the portfolio would keep growing. Every bandit, lord, and knight within 100 miles now knew one thing clearly. Touch Greywood, and the crazy baron will personally shove a sword through your neck, and not bother wiping the blood off before breakfast. But there was one more lesson buried in the wreckage of that night. That Lurian had not yet pulled out into the light. Looking at 30-odd surviving bandits tied to fence post, any other lord would have given the order without blinking. Rope or sword. Standard options. Both ending the same way. But Lurian's brain asked a beautiful, terrible question. The system says 1 silver coin per day for every legally registered living citizen. So what about slaves? Do slaves count? He walked up to the nearest bandit. A man shaking so hard his teeth chattered like a skeleton in a windstorm. Bar, bring me the registration ledger and a charcoal pen. Press your thumb here, he told the bandit. The man jammed his bloody thumb onto the parchment so hard he nearly ripped through it. Lurian held his breath, stared at his panel. 1 second. 2 seconds. Ding. Legal slave. Registered citizen 1. Current population 6,286. He couldn't help it. The words just came out of him. The system counts slaves. He turned around and looked at all 30-something prisoners, the fury on his face gone. Completely erased. Replaced by a smile so warm and enthusiastic it somehow managed to be more terrifying than his anger. No, we are not killing them, Bar, he said. In Greywood, we are merciful nobles. The light God teaches us to give lost souls a chance at redemption. The bandits' tear-streaked faces shifted from please don't murder us to wait, is he letting us go? Hope flickered in their eyes. Pete, register every single one of them. Mark them as lifetime slave status. The hope curdled. Set up a fenced enclosure at the quarry behind the mountain. 20 iron guard watching them at all times. Every disgusting job in Greywood, sewer cleaning. The most dangerous rock blasting. The heaviest hauling, goes to them. Feed them 1 meal a day. Just enough so they don't die. The bandits' faces went from hopeful to gray to devastated in about 3 seconds. Lurian leaned in close to the nearest one and smiled his most angelic smile. You should thank me. I just gave you a reason to live. The economics were a masterpiece. Cost to feed 1 slave, less than half a copper per day. Revenue per slave, 1 silver, which was 100 copper. Profit margin per bandit slave, approximately 20,000%. And they did all the jobs nobody else wanted. Sewer mucking, back-breaking hauling. The horrible stuff he would normally have to pay good citizens 5 coppers to do. Now done for free by people who had tried to rob him. A disaster had become a business opportunity. And his brain was already racing ahead to the real revelation. Every violent idiot who would ever try to mess with Greywood in the future was not a threat. They were free-range revenue walking straight into his registration book. Every enemy who attacked him was basically a silver coin volunteering to jump into his pocket. They just didn't know it yet. He had accidentally created the most perverse military incentive in the history of economics. He wanted people to attack him. Greywood was about to go from mud town nobody had heard of to the place that made empires nervous. What came next sealed it. Coal discovered deep under the quarry by his bandit slaves. Who thought they had dug into a demon's toilet? A half-elf agricultural scientist named Alara, bought out of a slave cage for 10 gold coins. Who could double crop yields using composted waste that the whole world called blasphemy? Heated greenhouses built in the middle of a blizzard that kept winter wheat sprouting, when everything else on the continent was frozen solid. Half-orc raiders captured, registered, and promoted to Greywood's first royal coal mining workforce. A species so physically powerful the system gave them a 300% efficiency bonus. A quarantine crisis that almost destroyed everything, teaching him the brutal lesson that growth without infrastructure was suicide, and sharpening his operation into something leaner, smarter, and far more dangerous. Each disaster fed the next breakthrough. Each attack became a recruitment drive. Each winter death from cold in the surrounding territories became a sale price on human beings. That Lurian was the only one with cash to buy. By the time the first blizzard had settled and the worst cold had passed, the system chimed with the number Lurian had once only dreamed about. Over 7,500 registered citizens, 0 deaths from cold. Daily payout climbing toward 80 gold coins. While every other lord on the continent was counting frozen bodies in the morning, Lurian was counting new arrivals. The world saw refugees. He saw silver coins that had grown legs and needed directions. The world saw bandits. He saw free labor that delivered itself, pre-motivated, ready for processing. The world saw a coal deposit. He saw the deletion of every population ceiling he had ever faced. The world saw a heretic half-elf scientist locked in a cage. He saw the woman who would turn 6,000 people's daily waste into enough food to feed 600,000. And through all of it, Greywood kept building. Houses in neat rows where shacks had stood. Roads paved with crushed stone where mud had been. Public bathhouses, sewage pits, heated greenhouses, iron tools. An army that ate well and fought like it had nothing left to lose, because it had once had nothing at all. And the men who built those walls remembered what that felt like. Merchants from across the region were now on permanent contract. Hobby for small supplies. Carl for refugee deliveries. Mars and the Gold Eagle Trading Company for industrial-scale logistics. None of them understood why Lurian kept paying premium prices for things other lords threw away. None of them needed to. The cover story held. To the outside world, a disgraced baron was going slowly broke feeding an army of refugees, burning through his dead mother's emergency savings. Tragic, really. Admirable, some said, in a completely doomed sort of way. And every single morning at 6 in the morning, the system chimed, and a fresh cascade of silver filled the storage in his head, faithful as sunrise. Indifferent to what anyone believed about him. The dragon had gold. The dragon had teeth. And the dragon was pretending to be a broke, kin-hearted fool in fancy boots who had stepped in donkey waste on his first day. Out in the frozen wasteland, other lords were thinking about spring, about trade routes reopening, about the balance sheets they would have to explain. A few of them were starting to hear strange things about Greywood, a refugee camp that nobody died in during the first blizzard, a baron who fed his people white bread, a town of supposedly starving nobodies that repelled the full bandit raid. Strange things, suspicious things, the kind of things that make powerful people uncomfortable. But suspicion and confirmation were two very different animals. And by the time anyone with real power started asking real questions, Lurian planned to have answers they could not argue with. Like an army, like walls, like granaries that could feed a city, like coal reserves that could heat a continent, like a population that would follow their lord through a burning building not because they had to, but because he was the first person in their entire lives who had ever guaranteed them a meal. Old Wolf was still out there every night, sitting by the gate with his rusty knife, his granddaughter asleep on his lap, watching the dark road with eyes that had seen too much war to trust the quiet. He had stamped a thumbprint on a dirty wooden plank for a bowl of porridge, and a chance his granddaughter might eat. That was the whole deal. That was the foundation of everything. And Lurian never forgot it. Not because it was noble, but because Old Wolf was silver coin 836, and Lurian Wisteria did not forget his assets. The funny thing was, somewhere along the way, the distinction between protecting assets and actually caring had started to blur at the edges. The 15 soldiers who died in the bandit raid still stung every morning. The construction worker lost in the cave-in was a permanent line item deleted from the ledger, and it bothered him in a way that had nothing to do with accounting. He would never admit that out loud. The image of cold, efficient, profit-driven baron was too useful to abandon. But the warmth in the way he watched Pete's mother nurse strangers back to health, the pride he felt watching Alara's wheat sprouts push through frozen ground, the genuine thrill of Old Wolf biting a copper coin to believe it was real. These were not the reactions of a man who only saw silver coins when he looked at people. They were the reactions of someone building something that mattered, whether he admitted it or not. In the capital, the nobles who had destroyed his family were probably laughing over their wine about the idiot, third son sent to rot in the borderlands. They would stop laughing. He was patient. Every morning at 6, the coins fell. Every week, the walls grew higher. The army grew stronger. The fields grew wider. Every winter that passed with 0 deaths was a message written in silver. To every lord on the continent, Greywood was not rotting. Greywood was not broke. Greywood was not a mud hole waiting to be absorbed. Greywood was becoming the kind of place that makes kingdoms nervous and sends kings looking for excuses to visit. It had started with one boot and donkey waste on a bad road in a forgotten corner of the empire. It had been built on porridge, copper coins, thumbprints on dirty wood, and the stubborn refusal to let a single breathing person stop being profitable. The first brick of what would one day become the greatest city on the continent had been laid not with stone, not with mortar, but with insanity and a profit margin that would make a dragon weep. And when spring finally came, when the snow melted and the trade roads cracked open and the wheat Alara had planted under, blizzard conditions began pushing toward the light. In their thousands of green rows, Lurian Wisteria stood on the hill above his town and looked at what had grown. Not just wheat, not just houses. A place where people who had been thrown away came to matter. Where a crippled old soldier biting a copper coin to believe it was real had become the most reliable captain on the frontier. Where a half-elf scientist called a heretic had been given unlimited resources to prove everyone wrong. Where even bandits who attacked the gates ended up fed, employed, and generating daily interest. The system chimed at 6, daily settlement, population, over 7,000 and climbing, payout, growing. He withdrew the morning's coins, let them rain into his hands, and closed his fingers around a fistful. Cold, heavy, real. He thought of Old Wolf biting copper. He thought of Pete stabbing a dead bandit 15 extra times just to be absolutely certain. He thought of Alara standing ankle-deep in silver, with the look of a woman whose life's work had finally been acknowledged. The most dangerous thing in the world was not a warlord with an army, not a king with gold, not a conspiracy in the capital with sharp knives and long memories. The most dangerous thing in the world was a man who had figured out how to make every person around him worth protecting, and who happened to have an unlimited reason to do it. Greywood was awake, and the rest of the world had no idea what was coming.